Hello everyone, welcome to Online Educator. Today we'll be posting a video about body cavities and serous membranes. So let us get started. The body maintains its internal organization by means of membrane, sheaths and other structures that separate the body into different compartments. We have the dorsal or posterior cavity and the ventral or anterior cavity, which are the two largest body compartments. Now you can see in the picture that these are the two largest cavities. These cavities contain and protect delicate internal organs. Now the ventral cavity allows the significant changes in the size and shape of the organs as they perform their functions. The lungs, heart, stomach and intestine, for example, can expand and contract without distorting other tissues and disrupting the activities of the nearby organs. Now we have the subdivisions of the posterior and anterior cavities. So we'll start with the posterior. In the posterior or dorsal cavity, we have the cranial cavity, which houses the brain, and the spinal cavity or the vertebral cavity that encloses the spinal cord. Just as the brain and spinal cord make up a continuous, uninterrupted structure, the cranial and spinal cavities that house them are also continuous. The brain and the spinal cord are protected by the bones of the skull and the vertebral column by the cerebrospinal fluid, a colorless fluid produced by the brain which cushions the brain and the spinal cord within the posterior or dorsal cavity. Then we have the anterior or ventral cavity, which has two main subdivisions, the thoracic cavity and the abdominal pelvic cavity. In the thoracic cavity is the most superior subdivisions in the anterior cavity itself, and it is enclosed by the rib cage. The thoracic cavity contains the lungs and the hearts, which are located in the mediastinum. We also have the diaphragm, which forms the floor of the thoracic cavity and separates it from the inferior abdominopelvic cavity. The abdominopelvic cavity is the largest cavity of the body. Although no membrane is physically there to divide the abdominopelvic cavity, it can be useful to distinguish between the abdominal cavity, the division that houses the digestive organs, and the pelvic cavity. Okay, now the division and in the pelvic cavity we have the organs of reproduction. Then we have the abdominal regions and the quadrants. To promote clear communication, for example, the location of a patient's abdominal pain or suspicious mass, the healthcare providers typically divide up the abdominal cavity into 9 regions or 4 quadrants. The more detailed regional approach subdivides the cavity with one horizontal line immediately inferior to the ribs and one immediately superior to the pelvis, and 2 vertical lines drawn as if dropped from the midpoint of the clavicle, that is the collarbone. This results in the 9 regions. Then we have the simpler quadrant approach, which is more commonly used in medicine. It subdivides the cavity by one horizontal and one vertical line that intersects at the patient's umbilicus or the navel. You can see that at the left side you have the 9 abdominopelvic regions, and at the left side at the right side you have the quadrants, and at the left side you have the regions. For the 9 regions you have the right and left hypochondriac regions. In the middle you have the epigastric. In the middle you have the umbilical region surrounded by right and left lumbar region. Then below the lowermost level in the middle you have the hypogastric region surrounded by right and left iliac region. In the quadrant it is more easier to remember: right and left upper quadrant, right and left lower quadrant. So then we have the membranes of the anterior body cavity or ventral body cavity. Now what are these serous membranes? A serous membrane, also referred to as serosa, is one line of a thin membrane that covers the walls and organs in the thoracic and abdominopelvic cavities. We have the parietal layers of the membrane, which lines the body cavity. Parietal refers to the cavity wall itself. Then we have the visceral layer of the membrane, which covers the organs. Between the parietal and visceral layer is a very thin fluid-filled membrane, fluid-filled surface, serous space or cavity. Then now there are 3 serous cavities and their associated membranes. We have the pleura, which is the serous membrane that encloses the pleural cavity that surrounds the lung. Then we have the pericardium. The pericardium is the serous membrane that encloses the pericardial cavity. The pericardial cavity surrounds the heart. Then we have the peritoneum, which is a serous membrane that encloses peritoneal cavity. The peritoneal cavity surrounds several organs in the abdominopelvic cavity. Now these serous membranes form fluid-filled sacs or cavities that are meant to reduce friction and cushion the internal organs when they move. So when the lungs inflate or the heart beats, both the parietal and visceral sera secrete the thin, slippery serous fluid located within the serous cavities. The pleural cavity reduces friction between the lungs and the body wall. Likewise, the pericardial cavity reduces friction between the heart and the wall of the pericardium. The peritoneal cavity similarly reduces friction between the abdominal and pelvic organs and the body wall. Therefore, serous membranes provide additional protection to the viscera, which is the internal organs they enclose, by reducing the friction that could lead to inflammation of the organs. So as shown in the picture, we have the viscera, then we have the cavity which is filled with fluid, then we have the parietal pericardium. We have the organ, which is lined closely by the visceral pericardium. Then we have a cavity, pericardial cavity. Then we have the parietal pericardium. It could be similarly shown with the help of a balloon. When you box into a balloon, you have as airspace. The line or the surface which is in contact with the hand is known as the visceral, and then the outer one is known as the parietal. Hope you have understood and the video was useful for you. And don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more videos. Do let me know in the comment section below what topic are you expecting the next video to be. And here are the references. I hope you liked the video, and don't forget to share because sharing is caring.